No, it can't, I said, my voice trembling. Please, Adam, I think, I think we've made a huge mistake. We? He asked, his tone quiet but firm. This wasn't a mistake, Ella. It's what you wanted. Remember? A modern marriage. Hi, I'm Ella, and this is a story of how I set myself up for failure. I had spent hours preparing Adam's favorite meal: grilled salmon, roasted veggies, and quinoa salad. The table was perfectly set, the wine resting in crystal glasses, breathing just right. Everything had to be flawless for this conversation. I'm not saying we're broken, I began, watching Adam's fork pause in midair, a piece of salmon dangling from the tines. But why not try something new? Ah, the look on his face was unforgettable, a mix of confusion and disbelief that almost made me laugh. But I kept my composure. This was too important to let giggles derail the moment. I had been planning this conversation for weeks, ever since Jen told me about the arrangement she and Mike had. It sounded thrilling, modern. Why couldn't we do the same? Leaning forward, excitement bubbled inside me. An open marriage, Adam. It's what all the modern couples are doing. It keeps things fresh and exciting. I paused, searching his expression. Don't you think we could use a little excitement? Are you unhappy with our marriage? He asked, hesitantly, his voice barely audible. The hurt in his eyes twisted my stomach, but I pushed the guilt away. Of course not, honey, I reassured him, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. But think about it. We could have the best of both worlds, the stability of our marriage with the excitement of new experiences. I felt a pang of guilt at the uncertainty in his eyes, but I ignored it. This wasn't about being dissatisfied. It was about growing together. I could see his mind racing. Adam had always been thoughtful, always putting my happiness first. It was one of the things I adored about him. Even if his predictability sometimes felt dull, that steadiness was part of why I wanted to do this, to shake things up. I'm not sure, Ella. This is a big step, he said, his brow furrowed. He set his fork down, the salmon forgotten. What about jealousy? What about feelings? What if one of us falls for someone else? I beamed, feeling like I was winning him over. I had rehearsed answers to all of these questions. Trust me, Adam. This will make our marriage stronger than ever, I said confidently. We'll set boundaries, communicate openly. It'll be something we experience together. Taking a sip of wine, I gathered my thoughts. As for jealousy, that's part of the growth. It'll teach us to trust each other completely. And feelings, we're adults, Adam. We can handle it. Our love is the foundation of everything. Nothing will change that. I watched as he swallowed hard, his dinner untouched. Okay, he said softly, barely loud enough to hear. If you really believe this is good for us, we can try. Clapping my hands in excitement, I couldn't contain my joy. Oh, Adam, you won't regret this, I promise. It's going to be amazing for both of us. As I began talking about setting boundaries and creating profiles for dating apps, I noticed his forced smile and distant nod. Little did I know, as I eagerly outlined our bright new future, that I had just set the wheels in motion to destroy everything we'd built together. The salmon sat untouched on our plates, the candles burned lower, and somewhere the fragile threads of our marriage began to fray. Hi, I'm Adam, and this is my side of the mess Ella started. It was 11:47 p.m. when I finally heard the door open. "So, how was it?" I asked, forcing a smile as Ella walked in. Her earlier excitement seemed dampened. "Oh, it was great," she said in a voice that was just a little too high-pitched. "Jason is fascinating. Did you know he's climbed Kilimanjaro and has the most incredible Peace Corps stories?" I nodded, trying to appear interested while fighting the knot in my stomach. "Sounds like quite a guy," I said, the words tasting bitter. Ella went on about the restaurant, the wine, and their conversation. But the more she talked, the more obvious it became that something was off. Her gestures were too exaggerated, her laugh slightly forced. She wasn't sharing a genuinely enjoyable experience. She was playing a part, acting out what she thought this was supposed to be. And then we said goodnight. "It was nice," she finished, her voice trailing off. I watched as she kicked off her heels and sank onto the couch, her posture heavy with weariness. It completely contradicted everything she'd just said. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to tell her it was okay if things hadn't gone as expected. But another part, a side of me I wasn't proud of, wasn't this her idea? Wasn't this what she wanted out of our modern marriage? "That's great, honey," I said, the lie bitter in my mouth. "I'm glad you had a good time." She squared her shoulders, forcing a smile. "I have another date next week with someone else. Variety is the spice of life, right?" I nodded silently, watching her head to the bathroom. As the door shut and the sound of the shower filled the air, I slumped into the armchair. The ticking clock mixed with the running water, creating an uneasy rhythm that echoed our new reality. As I sat there, head in my hands, I made a decision. If this was the game we were playing now, maybe it was time I actually joined in. Maybe it was time I stopped being the predictable, reliable Adam that Ella had grown so bored of. The thought sent a chill through me, equal parts anticipation and dread. What would happen if I embraced this lifestyle? How would Ella react if I started going on dates too? As the bathroom door creaked open, Ella stepped out, her robe wrapped tightly around her, damp strands of hair clinging to her shoulders. I pushed my swirling thoughts aside for the moment. We'd continue pretending, exchanging fake smiles and forced enthusiasm. But something within me had shifted. A tiny spark of change had been ignited. The soft clink of weights being set down drew my attention across the living room. Adam, fresh from his workout, wiped his forehead with a towel, a faintly satisfied smile playing on his lips. From the corner of my eye, I watched him while pretending to be engrossed in my chest. He seemed different these days, lighter somehow, but also more distant. When had that changed? It had been weeks since our open marriage experiment began, and things hadn't gone as I'd imagined. Every date left me feeling drained instead of exhilarated. Coming home, I'd plaster on a mask of excitement, but it was increasingly hollow. The thrill I had anticipated had been replaced by a gnawing emptiness. Meanwhile, Adam seemed to be flourishing. He was hitting the gym regularly and even dressing more sharply. It was as though he'd discovered a new sense of independence, and it unsettled me. The dependable, slightly predictable Adam I'd always known was transforming into a self-assured, confident version of himself, and I didn't know how to feel about it. "Hey," I called out, trying to sound casual. "Want to hear about my date last night?" Adam glanced up from his phone, his expression neutral. "If you feel like sharing," he said with a shrug, before returning to the screen. The indifference in his tone felt like a punch to the gut. When had he stopped caring? When had he stopped asking? I thought back to the early days of this arrangement, when he'd listened attentively, albeit uncomfortably, to my stories, his unease clear. Now, his lack of concern hurt even more. "It was fine," I said, my voice small. "Nothing special." Adam nodded absently, his attention still fixed on his phone. I wanted to scream, to shake him, to demand his focus, but I held back. This was what I'd asked for, wasn't it? The freedom to explore, to have experiences outside of our marriage. I just hadn't expected it to feel so isolating. "I've got a work event later this week," Adam said suddenly, looking up briefly. "Might meet some new people." My stomach nodded at his words. "Oh," I tried to keep my voice steady. "Anyone in particular?" He shrugged again, a small, almost smug smile touching his lips. "Maybe. We'll see." As he turned his attention back to his phone, I felt the ground beneath me shift. The balance in our relationship had changed. Adam wasn't just tolerating my plan anymore. He was embracing it. And somehow, that terrified me more than anything else. "Well, have fun," I said, forcing a smile he didn't even look up to see. The words felt bitter on my tongue. As I turned away, fighting back tears, the realization hit me with startling clarity. I was losing him, and the worst part? It was entirely my fault. I'd opened this door thinking it would bring excitement and growth. Instead, it was pulling Adam away from me. The soft glow of my laptop screen illuminated the dark living room. It was well past midnight, but sleep wouldn't come. A faint noise from the bedroom caught my attention. Ella was restless tonight, tossing and turning. I wondered if she was dreaming about her dates, the excitement she claimed to feel, or if, like me, she was lying awake, questioning the choices that had led us here. I turned back to the screen and finally typed out a message to someone I'd been chatting with. Sarah. She was witty, sharp, and most importantly, she wasn't Ella. As I hit send, a mix of guilt and exhilaration washed over me. Sarah and I had been messaging for weeks now. While nothing physical had happened, the connection we'd formed was undeniable. She made me feel noticed, appreciated in a way I hadn't felt with Ella in a long time. The bedroom door creaked open, and I quickly minimized the chat window. Ella padded into the living room, rubbing her eyes. Her feet slipped on a weird, bloody something or other. Adam, what are you doing up so late? I forced a casual smile, just catching up on some work emails. Couldn't sleep. Ella nodded, but the flicker of doubt in her eyes was unmistakable. She'd been watching me more closely lately, her gaze filled with a mix of confusion and what looked like fear. Don't stay up too late, she murmured, before retreating back to the bedroom. As the door clicked shut, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The guilt gnawed at me, but it was overshadowed by growing resentment. Wasn't this what Ella had wanted? For us to explore, to connect with others outside our marriage? I reopened the chat with Sarah, a smile creeping across my face as I read her reply. We were planning to meet for coffee later in the week. Just coffee, I told myself, but deep down, I knew it was more than that. It felt like a lifeline, a glimpse of what life might look like without the turmoil of this so-called open marriage. As I typed out my response, confirming a time and place, I couldn't ignore how different things were now. Ella's grand experiment had failed spectacularly. Her attempts to juggle multiple partners had left her drained and frustrated. I'd watched her return from dates, her excitement more forced with each passing week. But me? I felt free. The initial pain and betrayal had given way to a renewed sense of self. I was rediscovering parts of myself I'd neglected, exploring interests and connections I hadn't considered in years. And Sarah? She was a big part of that. Tomorrow, I decided, tomorrow I would tell Ella everything about Sarah, about my feelings, about where this was heading. It was time to stop pretending, time to face the consequences of the choices Ella had made for us both. As I finally drifted off to sleep, my last thought was of Sarah and the coffee we'd share in just a few days. For the first time in months, I felt a spark of hope for the future, a future I was starting to accept might not include Ella. My name is Hannah Julio, and I have finally drifted off to sleep. My official label reads Dietitian Administered. The house was eerily quiet, save for the faint ticking of the clock on the mantel. I sat curled up on the couch, staring at the front door, a cold cup of tea forgotten on the table. Adam was out again, with her. Why was your night? I'd asked earlier, trying to sound casual, but the tightness in my voice had betrayed me. Adam barely glanced up from his phone, giving a nonchalant shrug before disappearing into the evening. I thought back to the night I had proposed this ill-fated arrangement, the hope and misplaced enthusiasm I'd felt. I'd been so confident it would bring us closer, strengthen our bond. Instead, it had driven us further apart. Instead, it had torn us apart, leaving me alone with the shattered remains of our relationship. My attempts at dating had fizzled out weeks ago, each one leaving me feeling emptier, more aware of what I was jeopardizing. Adam, on the other hand, seemed to thrive. The shy, slightly passive man I had married was gone, replaced by someone confident and self-assured, someone who no longer seemed to rely on me. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway snapped me out of my thoughts. My heart raced as I heard the key turn in the lock and the door swing open. Adam stepped in, looking content and at ease. "Everything I wasn't. You're still up?" he asked, his voice laced with mild surprise. There was no guilt in his tone, no explanation for his late return. When had that changed? "I couldn't sleep," I murmured, searching his face for a glimpse of the man I had married. "Adam, can we talk?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's late, Ella. Can't this wait until morning?" "No, it can't," I said, my voice cracking. "Please, Adam, I think we've made a terrible mistake." "We?" His voice was quiet, but firm. "This was your decision, Ella. There's no mistake here. This is what you wanted. A modern marriage. Freedom to explore." Tears welled up in my eyes. "But it's not what I want anymore. Can't we just go back? Pretend this never happened?" There's only one way to say goodbye. One can only accept this secret in this moment. Adam's laugh was hollow, devoid of warmth. "Go back to what? To you being bored? To me being taken for granted?" "No, Ella, I don't think we can go back." His words hit me like a blow. I sat frozen, watching as he turned and walked to the bedroom. No, his bedroom, now. The soft click of the door closing felt as final as a gunshot. I sank back onto the couch, tears streaming down my face as the weight of what I'd done crushed me. I had opened Pandora's box and now had no idea how to close it again. The tension was thick as I walked into the living room. No, my living room. Ella sat on the couch, her eyes red and swollen, clearly from hours of crying. Somewhere, deep inside me, a small part of me wanted to comfort her, but that part was buried under layers of resentment and newfound independence. "We need to talk," I said, my voice calm and steady. I watched her face fall even before I finished speaking. She knew. Of course she knew. Ella wasn't stupid, just selfish and misguided. "Adam, please," she began, her voice trembling. "I know I made a mistake. We can fix this. We can go back to how things were." A harsh, bitter laugh escaped my lips, sounding unfamiliar even to me. "Go back? There's no going back, Ella. You made sure of that the moment you decided our marriage wasn't enough for you." She flinched as though I had struck her. "That's not fair," she said weakly. I thought this would bring us closer, make things exciting again." "Exciting?" I repeated, the word tasting sour in my mouth. "Well, congratulations. You definitely made things exciting, just not the way you intended." I turned toward the bookshelf, my fingers tracing the spines of books we'd collected over the years. How many of these had we read together, curled up on lazy Sunday afternoons? Those memories felt like they belonged to another life. "I've met someone," I said, turning to face her. "Someone who values me for who I am. Someone who doesn't need to spice things up or experiment with our relationship." Ella's face crumpled. fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. Adam, no. Please. I love you. We can work through this. I'll do anything. For a moment, I allowed myself to really look at her, the woman I had once promised to love, for better or worse. She looked small, broken, but any pity I felt was overshadowed by cold resolve. She had done this to us. It's over, Ella, I said, my voice firm and steady. I'm done with this sham of a marriage. I'm done pretending that what we had is enough. You opened this door, and now I'm walking through it. But our vows, she whispered, clutching at the fragments of our shared history. We promised. I cut her off with a bitter laugh. You broke those vows the second you suggested this open marriage. You can't just pick and choose which parts of our commitment matter, Ella. It doesn't work that way. I moved to the door, placing my hand on the knob. I'll be staying with Sarah for a while. Someone will come by to get my things. Sarah, she whispered, her voice hollow. You're leaving me for her? I turned back to meet her gaze. I'm not leaving you for her, Ella. I'm leaving you for me. Sarah is just a fresh start, one I wouldn't have found if you hadn't been so determined to modernize our marriage. The irony wasn't lost on me. Ella's grand experiment, meant to strengthen our bond, had instead given me the strength to walk away and discover a version of myself I hadn't known existed. Please, she begged, reaching out to me. Don't do this. I'll do anything. We can go to counseling. I stepped back out of her reach. It's done, Ella. I hope you find whatever it is you are looking for. I hope this modern approach to love brings you all the excitement you craved. Goodbye. With that, I walked out, closing the door firmly behind me. Through the wood, I could hear Ella's muffled sobs. I didn't turn back. I couldn't. The version of me who would have comforted her, who would have forgiven her misguided attempts to revive our marriage, no longer existed. As I walked to my car, where Sarah waited with a supportive smile, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The guilt, the anger, the pain of the past few months, they all melted away, replaced by a sense of freedom and possibility. Ella had wanted a modern marriage. She got one, just not the way she'd imagined. As I drove away, leaving behind the ruins of our life together, I couldn't find it in myself to feel sorry for her. This was the path she had chosen, and I had simply followed it to its inevitable conclusion. The modern marriage experiment was over, and in its place, a new Adam had emerged, stronger, more confident, and finally free.